All right, let's get one thing straight. So, Jesus, who is the King of Kings, was born into this world as a man and born into it in a very lowly way. It's one of the many things about God's good news that's surprising. Yeah, you may know that Jesus was born and laid in a manger. He was born in the town of Bethlehem in Judea. But there's some other surprising things that you probably have heard that are incorrect. Like Jesus, he was not born in a barn. So much of this comes from Kenneth Bailey's Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes. And in that study, he finds out some great things. But some of the things that we get wrong in our amalgamation of the birth story or the gospel stew, like all the different accounts and even traditions, and all the things we roll in there from our Christmas specials, some of them are incorrect. Like for one, Jesus probably wasn't likely born the very night that Joseph and Mary rolled into Bethlehem, and Joseph and Mary probably weren't hurried or rushed along, and they probably had a good idea that they would be able to find some sort of accommodations because hospitality is so big in Eastern cultures. And Joseph was from the line of David in a town that prided itself on being David's birthplace. So that we know. And we also know that from Luke chapter 2, verse 6, that it says the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. I mean, they were there for multiple days. Now, you might not think that's neither here or there, but certainly Joseph and Mary's actual birth story of Jesus probably doesn't fit perfectly into a format for TV. But they did find suitable arrangements, and even if they hadn't, we know that Mary had her cousin Elizabeth within a walking distance there because she went and visited her just a couple of months earlier in the Judean hillside. So the most likely version is that they found lodging with a friend or extended family in their main house. Yeah, Jesus was probably born not in the guest house or the upper room, but in the main house of a regular peasant villager's one-room home. Yeah, here, Bailey has some illustrations of what that one-room home might look like. And in that, it's oftentimes sloped down towards the entrance. It makes it easier for cleaning and washing out. But in this single-room home, they leave a spot near the entrance, near the bottom, for animals because farmers would want their ox and their donkeys and their sheep to come inside at night for warmth and also for extra safety from theft. Here's a side picture of it. And so if you have your animals bring them in at night, that would make sense, especially to an Eastern audience, why Jesus was born. He was laid in a manger. It's our own assumptions and cultural assumptions that, hey, if he's put into a feeding trough for an animal, that means he must have been born in a stable or a barn. And that's not necessarily the case. There's some other interesting things about how we may have come to some of our misunderstandings about the place of Jesus' birth and other word studies that Bailey does throughout the Old Testament. But just take this one, for example. He talks about how the parable of the Good Samaritan, where this man is beaten and he's taken to an inn for care. The Greek word that Luke, the same author, uses for an inn where one could expect to go and find services is pantelontion, which is commercial in nature. The person can go there and pay for lodging and care. But in the birth narrative, the same author, Luke, uses the Greek word katalima. And in there, it's translated into inn, which then naturally takes our minds to a roadside motel with a blinking no vacancy sign. But really, katalima just simply means a place to stay, which can be many different types of shelters. So if Joseph and Mary were refused a room at a traditional inn, why wouldn't Luke have used that same word that he used in the story about the Good Samaritan? It's probably because they went to a regular family's home, and that family had already given out their guest room or inn above that had been built and added on either beside or above their house. So the only room left for them was down near the animals where they sleep in the main family living. Now, we're not busting up the Christmas play scenery for no reason. There's some things we should take from this. First, we have some things right. The fact that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, it celebrates Jesus' connection, not only to Jesus' distant relative, King David, and the prophecies that go along with that, but it also means that the word Bethlehem means house of bread, which means that the bread of life was born in the house of bread. And Jesus, who was God, he came and was born in as common and a normal way as possible. I mean, literally, Emmanuel, God with us, God acting and living among us. I mean, in that same way, like the common people that were there, from the hosts, the poor people whose house they stayed in, who would then later come and hear Jesus' revolutionary message about first things being last and last things being first, and the poor being given the kingdom, to the unclean and dirty shepherds who were welcomed into this birth story from the very beginning, the incarnation of God, and how the most beautiful angelic choir that's ever performed didn't perform at a palace, but performed before these ordinary people in an insignificant village. Yeah, Jesus wasn't born in a barn, likely, but the important parts of the story remain intact. And I hope that your view of Jesus' birth is enriched by this, that knowing the culture and the reality of the situation, I hope it brings light to your view of our Savior's birth here this holiday season. Merry Christmas.